Good morning and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center. I'm Chelsea Bayarte here with NASA astronaut Loral O'Hara, who just returned from the International Space Station after a 204-day stay in the orbiting laboratory. Loral, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thanks everybody for following the mission, and I'm excited to answer your questions today.
Sounds great. So this is her post-landing news conference. She just returned from the International Space Station. So we're excited to ask her some questions about her mission. We have some reporters here in the room who we're going to toss to first, but we're also taking questions on our phone bridge here. So if you have a question, go ahead and press *1 to raise your hand to ask a question. If your question has already been asked, please press *2 to lower your virtual hand. And we're also taking some questions on social media as well. So shout out to everyone on the NASA Johnson Instagram who has already submitted their questions, but we're continuing to look out for even more using hashtag AskNASA. So I'll toss it now to Loral O'Hara with some opening remarks.
Yeah, just a huge thank you to everyone who followed along with the mission. It was the experience of a lifetime. I had an awesome time in space, and it's nice to be back, and I'm looking forward to talking more about the mission now. Thanks.
Thank you, Loral. So we'll go ahead and take some questions right here in the room.
Gina Sinceri, ABC News. I have a couple of questions. I read varying, astronauts' recollections of what the recovery time was. What do you think it was for you before you felt like you had your Earth legs back?
Great question. I still feel like I'm getting my Earth legs back a little bit, but the time, like I've been back on planet Earth for a week now, and I feel like a totally new human than I did this time last week. I definitely, when I got to space, I didn't really feel sick. I wasn't really that motion sick, and I was hoping that my return to Earth would be that easy. But definitely for the first 48 hours, I had a fair bit of motion sickness, just kind of moving my head around. I felt nauseous. But after a couple days, that went away. Like every day got better and better. And now I pretty much feel normal. I can take a corner too fast and be a little unstable, but for the most part, I'm feeling really good.
How would you say when you got to the space station, how it affected your senses? How did each sense interpret what was happening to you?
Yeah, also a good question. And that's kind of hard to answer. I'm not really sure. I think it was mostly just getting used to the 3D environment where we, all of our training, there's a top and a bottom and a left and a right. And then you get to space station and suddenly that all goes away. And you can be working in any orientation. You can see your crewmates working in any orientation. And for the first week or two on space station, or first couple weeks, that's really disorienting. So you kind of have to take a minute and remember what module you're in and which direction your head is pointing. And then eventually that just goes away almost without you realizing it. And that's kind of how also readapting to gravity has been too.
Great, thank you so much for your question. We're going to head now to our phone bridge. We have Elizabeth Howell with Space.com.
Welcome home. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the training and prep for your spacewalk with Jasmine, and just a little bit about the milestone of being the 4th all-women spacewalk. Thanks very much.
Thanks. The spacewalk was definitely one of the most amazing days of the mission and also of my life. That's one of the biggest things that we do in training for astronauts, and where we spend most of our time is training for a spacewalk. And so getting to actually do that was just this amazing feeling. I felt like we were really well prepared. That was probably one of the biggest feelings I took away from that day. I just woke up that morning with this sense of deep focus and preparation and just ready to go do a job. And I attribute that to all the time that we spent at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab doing training underwater, all the time that we spent here at Johnson Space Center training with the hardware and learning all the suit systems with our instructors. When we actually went to do it, we just got to focus on the job at hand, and that was just a really amazing feeling. And then for the spacewalk itself, I mean, nothing compares to the feeling of stepping outside and being in your own little spacesuit looking at Earth just through your helmet bubble. So it's one thing, looking through the windows, looking at Earth and space station through the windows of Cupola, but then suddenly you're just immersed in the environment, and you're hanging there, and the Earth's moving below your feet, and maybe you have a hand on space station, or maybe not. And space station is there in 3D. It's just was beautiful and challenging, and just an awesome opportunity to get to have.
Awesome. So I want to take this opportunity to go to a question online as well. We've got Megan who wants to know, what do you miss the most about space, and what are you going to miss the least?
There's not one thing I miss the most, but definitely a top three. The first thing that I miss is just my crewmates and the experience, getting to share that experience with them, first with Crew 7 and then with Crew 8. And also with the ground teams. You know, it takes a huge team to make every day on Space Station run, and so just getting to work with everybody was definitely a highlight. I'll also miss getting to look at Earth, just pop into the cupola and see what part of the planet we're over. There was always something that would surprise me or that I found amazing. And then lastly, floating. Floating was just really fun, and getting to do that. Things I'll miss the least. There's not really like any one big thing. Just like if you're living and working anywhere for 6 months, there's little things that annoy you. And for me, like it was, I don't know, like trying to pack a bag that was really stuffed. And on Earth, you can kind of tuck everything away into the corners, but in space, when everything's floating, you know, you unzip a bag that's full of things, and all the things want to come out. And if you're looking for one little thing in that bag, suddenly you've got, you know, a real mess on your hands. And just little things like that where, depending on how the day was going, it was more or less frustrating. But nothing really big.
Definitely. I'm going to go over to our phone bridge now for a question. We have one from Keith Cowing with NASA Watch.
Hi, Keith Cowing from NASA Watch and astrobiology.com. I have a question that comes out of my own experience doing long expeditions to remote locations, small tents, bad food, you know. But when there's that amazing place I visited and explored, everything just sort of goes away. You've been a submersible driver and a long-term space station astronaut, and both things are called expeditions. But in one case, you leave the big floating lab and go somewhere. In the other case, you stay in the big orbiting lab while it goes somewhere, and you go outside maybe once or twice. So, question. Which of these activities is a better analog for what astronauts, maybe you, will be doing on the Moon and Mars, or are they both valuable? And what other space activities or analogs might be useful to help prepare these future space explorers? Again, maybe you.
I didn't hear the whole question.
So I know one part of the question was talking about analogs here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Keith, you were a little quiet here in the room. And so we'll come back after this one. But so how do expeditions here on Earth kind of prepare astronauts for not only the International Space Station, but the Moon as well?
Oh yeah, I think there are lots of analogs that we can do here on Earth to prepare. I mean, before I worked at NASA, I worked as an ocean engineer, and I went out on research ships, and that was a great analog. Like you said, you've had a lot of experiences around the world working in Antarctica, doing field work pretty much anywhere. I think having a small team in the field working with a team, you know, somewhere else back on shore with more resources, I think is a good analog for both space station and all the missions that we're hoping to do in the future.
So Keith, I see you're still here on the phone. Does that answer your question? Was there another part to your question? I'm so sorry, we didn't hear it all the way in the room if you wanted to repeat part of your question.
No, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got another question on our phone bridge from Elizabeth Howell with space.com.
Loral, thanks for taking me again. I was wondering if you had talked to your crewmates about the preparations they were doing for the solar eclipse. I realize that, of course, you weren't quite up there, but did you have a chance to talk with them about the photography? And if you can't answer that, can you talk about the auroras that you saw? Because that's also related to the sun. Thank you.
Yeah, I know they were doing a lot of preparations to get ready for that. And I didn't talk to them in detail about the photography, but just about the experience in general, and it sounded like it was an epic day on Space Station as well as on Earth. I was hoping to get up there and see it myself, or get into the path of totality and see it myself, but with the delay in my return, I was here at Johnson Space Center, so I just stepped outside for a minute. But I know they got a good show on Space Station. We got a lot of good auroras during our mission. They were one of my favorite things to see. You could usually see them, especially just kind of behind my Soyuz vehicle. And so that was particularly beautiful, just watching Space Station kind of fly through the auroras was one of my favorite things.
That sounds amazing. We're going to go now to a question online from AJ, who would like to ask you, what were some of the difficult daily tasks while in space, other than bagpacking?
Stowage in general could be good or bad sometimes, especially if you were running a little bit behind and then you saw, what location you had to go get something out of. So sometimes your heart would kind of sink, being like, oh, that's gonna take me a while to do. But day-to-day challenges, I mean, it was ends up being kind of like on Earth. You have good days, you have harder days. But like I said, my crewmates, getting to chit-chat with ground, getting to look out at Earth, all of those things made every day, overall pretty good.
We're going to go back to our phone bridge, taking a question there. Andrea Leinfelder with the Houston Chronicle.
Hi. I believe we spoke last and you had some watercolor paintings you were playing around with. I was wondering if you could describe your favorite watercolor painting you made in space, if you continued that. And also, I saw on X that you had some haircut experience. Did you ever cut hair before space? Thanks.
No, I cut hair once before space, and I cut Frank Rubio's hair in Baikonur before he launched, and he kind of gave me a lesson on how to cut hair, and so I attribute any of my hair cutting skills to that lesson in Baikonur from Frank, and then I got a lot better at it, I think, on orbit, with maybe one or two misses, but it was overall pretty good. And surprisingly, mine was okay when I got back, because I cut mine three times, I think, while I was up there. So I wasn't sure what it would look like when I got back, but it was okay. And I ended up, I kind of messed around with watercolors while I was up there, but I like to paint and draw a lot on the ground, but I didn't really have a lot of experience with watercolors, and it ended up being kind of just more like I doodle in my crew quarters and stuff, but I never really got good enough to paint to painting. Instead, I actually got really into photography while I was up there, not surprisingly. So I spent a lot of time, figuring that out and getting better at that. And writing, I like to write a lot as well. So that's how I was trying to capture the experience.
So let's talk a little bit more about water. We've got a question from Tim online who wanted to know, do you have to drink more or less water when you're in space? Or is it pretty much the same as when you're on Earth?
I think I definitely tried to drink more water. Space station is pretty low humidity, so it's a pretty dry environment, and staying hydrated is important because overall, once we get to space, we lose a fair bit of our blood volume, so staying hydrated is important. So I definitely try to drink. I mean, I try to drink water down on Earth too, but I was a little bit better about it on space station.
Continuing on with our online questions, we've got a question from Heather Knott, who wants to know what was the first thing you ate once you got home?
Chips and guacamole. I had chips and guacamole multiple times. That was like my first meal and my second meal, and then several lunches this week, or last week too. It's like the one thing I craved up there.
I've heard that's a popular
and
answer.
I got it.
We're here in Texas. You have to have your guacamole.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to a question from Mig, who submitted their question online, who wants to know, how did you cope with stress or anxiety when you're on the space station?
Yeah, great question, because working in an environment like that and in any remote operational environment, you can't just go home at the end of the day. You're living, also where you work, and so everything is always there. But for me, working, exercise, I think for a lot of us is a good way to kind of decompress. That was 2.5 hours every day where you could just put on headphones and listen to music or read something while you do cardio and lift weights. I also popped into cupola, like I said, all the time. That was an awesome way to relax with or without music, with or without friends. It was just nice to kind of get to hang out and see Earth and see whatever was going on down there. And yeah, and then also just time in my crew quarters. Space station is surprisingly big for 4 people on the USOS side. And so there's always a nook that you can kind of squirrel away in if you want to read or write or just kind of be by yourself for a little bit.
So speaking of those times that you're in the cupola, you're looking down at Earth, we have a question from Danny from Instagram who wants to know, how did this journey change your perception of human life on Earth when you were looking down?
Yeah. I don't know if it changed so much as reinforced a lot of things that I already felt. It's this perspective of Earth as one planet, not just a bunch of countries, hundreds of countries. It's one planet that we all share. And so for me, it was a deep sense of feeling connected to the planet as a whole, which is something I felt before launch. But you really see once you're in space, and you can see entire continents that just in one view, and see the planet against the blackness of space. That was definitely a poignant feeling. And then also just the sense that Earth is really special. You sit up in space and it's just this beautiful planet that's so alive. You see lightning storms, lightning dancing between clouds. You look down and or look back on Earth and you know it's just this marvelously complex ecosystem that's happening every second. I remember there was one day, a friend of mine, Julie Huber, was on a research cruise in the Pacific Ocean, and she shared a video of a baby octopus hatching on the seafloor there. And I saw that video, and then later that day we were flying over that part of the Pacific Ocean. And so there's just this moment where I'm up in cupola, I'm in space in this incredible space station that we built, and somewhere down underneath all that water is a baby octopus just going through its first few days of life. And that's happening all over the planet in a million different ways. And so it's just this recognition about how complex and diverse and beautiful Earth is and all of the life that it supports.
That sounds really beautiful. We're going to go to a question from our phone bridge from Andrea Leinfelder with the Houston Chronicle.
Hey, thanks for the second question. I'm just curious, obviously you're a Houston native, and so I'm curious, when you came back, what was the one thing in the Houston area that you were really looking forward to doing that you have already done or you hope to do soon? Thanks.
Well, being a Houston native, my family's all really close, and so one of the highlights for me in getting back is that they were all there at landing. So I got off the airplane, and they were all standing at the bottom of the stairs, and I have a new baby nephew, so I got to meet him for the first time, and a baby niece who I just met when she was 6 weeks old, and now she's almost a year. And so getting to see my family and meet my niece and nephew was a highlight. And then they had actually Airbnb'd a house on the water, and so we got to go over to the ocean pretty much later that same day, and water's really important to me. And so just getting to spend time with them next to Galveston Bay, where I spend a lot of time here, was really special.
We're going to go back to questions from social media. We have one from Jay Van Evert on X, who wanted to know, what was the most interesting science experiment that you carried out and why?
Oh man, that's a tough question. We work on hundreds of science experiments in any one mission, and one of the things I really enjoyed was the diversity of stuff that we got to work on, working especially the SpaceX missions that are kind of these compressed schedules. Usually the vehicle's on board for about a month, and it brings up a lot of science that we have to get done in that month. And so those were super fun weeks, just working on a wide variety of research. But some of my personal favorites were the experiments that I got to do in the life sciences glove box. And that was a wide variety of experiments looking at all aspects of human health and astronaut health in microgravity, but also with a lot of applications to Earth as far as immune system function and aging and how our cells are impacted by that. And so I really enjoyed those days because it was very much like working in a laboratory. We were taking care of cell cultures, feeding these cells basically with media inside syringes, and I felt very much like a scientist in a laboratory on those days, and it was really fun.
That Super cool. We've got another one from social media from Scantic Antiques on X, who wants to know, how does it feel to be home? How has the journey been like?
Overall, it feels really good. There's all these little things about planet Earth that I either knew I missed on space station, just like wind in the trees, and then all these little things that I'd kind of forgotten about. Like I got to my house for the first time on Saturday or Friday night, and then Saturday morning I woke up and made myself a cup of coffee and went out and sat on the porch steps like I do most days, and just like little things like that, listening to the birds sing while the sun comes up. Those moments have all been really nice. I also really miss station and my crewmates. Last week was also really hard because I didn't return with the crew that I launched, so I returned with a different crew. So it was very much, and I was with Crew 8 long enough, and Tracy, that we, it was like, you're a family up there. And so I felt like I had gotten plucked out of my little space family and dropped back on planet Earth. And that was a little, jarring at times as well. So I definitely miss space station and my crewmates. But it's also really nice to be back here with family and friends and, back here at NASA as well, seeing everybody.
So we've got another question from online. Speaking of all these astronauts that you've been spending time with, Myrna on Instagram wants to know, how can I apply to be an astronaut like you guys?
Excellent and timely question. Astronaut applications are open right now, and they close in 2 days. And so the first step in becoming an astronaut is submitting an application. So if you're interested, then I would encourage anybody to go online and submit an application before April 16th.
I'm going to do one more time for any questions here in the room. All righty. Well, Loral, thank you so much for joining us. As Loral said, if you want to become an astronaut and go to the International Space Station or even the moon one day, just like Loral, coming back from her 204-day International Space Station mission, the application is open. You have until tomorrow at midnight Eastern Time to apply to become an astronaut. Loral, welcome back to planet Earth. If you want to continue to follow Loral O'Hara's mission, I encourage you to follow our blogs, our social media pages that we have for our NASA astronauts. Keep up with all that Laura's been up to and all that she's going to be doing now that she's back on Earth. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for all the great questions.
That's it for our post-landing news conference. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.